Obviously, he laughed his head off when I said that because it didn't translate that word. It translated it as condoms. So just to be clear, I try and avoid condoms in my food. So,
Isn't that what we're trying to do with customers through customer experience, through every interaction?
but when it comes to me going to get a kebab, I don't really want to be authenticating myself just to access an app.
Yeah.
Sometimes you can build friction into the experience to drive confidence and to drive trust with customers. Think of it like a click of a seatbelt or the thud of a well-built car, like Volvo have that sound when you shut the door, you know that you're safe in that car, right?
I didn't get a confirmation email. I didn't get a ping. I didn't get a tick. I didn't get one complete. I was like, what's happened?
Yeah.
Immediately frustrating. So you guys create a new account. You've already got an account.
If you're going abroad, you don't want all your transactions stopped because the bank goes, you're not in the right country, so we're going to stop everything.
I've seen a ton of these scam videos on YouTube actually where they were trying
Indian call center. I know cybersecurity is not the sexiest subject, but it's an important one. Some of the insight and some of the shit, like I'm still thinking here going, a developer doesn't think about security, but they're writing the code.
Welcome to this very latest episode of Breaking the Blueprint. We're now at episode 4, and today we are planning to evolve the conversation on from what we've been discussing in the past. As always, I'm joined by Vinay Palmer.
Hello.
Good to have you join me.
Yeah, good afternoon.
And we've got another guest with us, which we'll introduce very shortly. But Vinay, tell me, what's been going on since we've last, we did this now, I think it's been 4 or 5 weeks.
Yeah,
it feels like it's been a while.
Last in the studio in March, I think it was, and where we did the airport one, which got some great feedback, some nice comments, and people are always fascinated by airports and travel and stuff that happens behind the scenes. That was quite an interesting podcast, and we got some nice points of view from Matt. And then since then, so I've had a big bit of news. So I've, as you know, I had a consultancy that focused around customer experience, as well as my speaking business, and I've acquired a majority stake in another consultancy called Customer Whisperers. And Customer Whisperers is a company that I've worked with in the past. They've been going about 18 years, worked with some fantastic brands. I've collaborated on projects with them, with people like National Express, Red Row, Boohoo, Ping Identity, and a few others. And the founder, Nikki Sawford, and I have known each other for a number of years. We first met in a coffee shop in Euston.
Oh, wow.
In 2013. Yeah. And it's been one of these off and on, will they, won't they? We've always been talking about doing something together, business-wise. Never really been the right time. And then we did a project together, started a project together before Christmas, and the chemistry was just right. It just felt like a good move. And I'm merging my company with that as part of the equity buy into Customer Whisperers. Will now operate under the Customer Whisperers brand. So Drivastar will become part of that, but it doesn't change the conversation. It's still all about customer loyalty, advocacy, trust, helping organizations to drive better experiences, to keep customers coming back and telling their friends.
Yeah, that's the end game, isn't it?
Yeah.
And well, congratulations first of all.
Thank you.
Massive news, isn't it?
Thank you.
I know you've been working on this for a while, so it's good to see that kind of close off. And I've also noticed like it's been quite a busy time actually since we last did this, hasn't it? Like you've been obviously busy with the acquisition of this company and everything else. So it's always good to get some time together like this and
definitely
continue that conversation. As you said, the last conversation around airports was great. Everybody resonated with it, and today's kind of conversation it touches on some aspects of what we did last time around security. I think that's what we want to kind of talk about and kind of delve into all elements around the implications of security when it comes to customer experience. And I think we've all had a story around that.
Yeah, definitely.
Now a special mention for the sponsor of this podcast, Novavox. If you're looking to empower your generative AI with your data and your intents, Novavox can help deliver end-to-end contextual services by integrating your applications with generative AI. This will help you deliver personalized support and natural interactions tailored to your customers' needs. Essentially, Novavox represents the glue between your applications, data, and AI. Now, if you're interested in learning more, get in touch directly or contact us via our website, evolved.cx. But before we go into that, I've got a bit of a tech mishap that I want to kind of share with you.
Oh
guys
no,
as
not
well.
you as well.
Yeah, not as bad as what you went through last time.
Thanks.
So yeah, no, I can say it wasn't as bad as that. But so I came across a situation where I had with a prospect over a Zoom call, and we were planning to have a translator with us because this prospect was French speaking. And they ended up just being the two of us in a conversation. He spoke no English. I definitely don't speak any French. So Zoom has this AI feature called Translate. So it can translate the conversation. I've always spoken about this, but I've never actually put it into practice. So I said to him, like, let's switch on our translation. Let's give it a go. Right? We've got an hour booked in. Let's do a full conversation. Let's have a full-blown conversation. And we did that. And actually, from a discovery conversation standpoint, it went pretty well. Like I understood where he was coming from, his pain points, and he kind of understood where I was going with it. And then I kind of made the mistake of attempting a bit of small talk at the end of that conversation. And this is where it kind of fell apart a little bit. Actually, the translation was good, but there was this one point where we started speaking about diets for some reason. I don't know why this happened. I was just talking about I like French food and that kind of thing. And he kind of understood that well. And then I think he asked me a similar question. And I said, look, I'll kind of try and avoid preservatives in the food that I eat. And I don't know if you guys know, but preservatives, do you know what that is in French?
No, but I've got a feeling you're about to tell us.
I am, yeah. Look, without being crass, it's condoms. Right? So nowhere near it. And look, obviously he laughed his head off when I said that because it didn't translate that word. It translated it as condoms. And he's like, yeah, no shit. No. So just to be clear, I try and avoid condoms in my food.
Very good. And it's good for me to hear that I'm not the only one that has these tech mishaps. Well, I managed to stay clear of most of them while I've been. I mean, talking about tech and all things tech. So as we know, we set this podcast up to talk all about the art and science of customer experience and customer loyalty and driving trust. And our commitment was to try and bring together conversations that aren't necessarily obvious, different points of view, different people that come in. And so most people wouldn't put cybersecurity together with customer experience in the same space. And this kind of episode sparked from a friend of mine, Vimal Rai, shout out to Vimal in Dubai, who has a brilliant customer experience company out there. Vimal had shared a post about his experience going through airports recently and so many touch points that were built around biometrics. So he didn't have a lot of human contact. He checked in by himself. He checked his bags in by himself. He went it was pretty incredible. But it just got me thinking about that. Cybersecurity, we've talked on and off about data collection and those kind of things as well. But when you really think about it, every time a customer interacts with your brand, they're into that trust conversation, right? So it's not just the trust of what they can see, but it's also behind the scenes. There's a click of a button, a form filled in, they share their data with you in some kind of way. All of that is essentially that trust part of the conversation. And in digital businesses, there's this kind of behind the scenes digital handshake happening that facilitates that, right? So it got me thinking about the subject for this. And then Anish, who's here, Anish Chauhan, who's the founder of Equilibrium Security, Cybersecurity, has been a friend of mine for many, many years. We've known each other since we were not quite in diapers, maybe a little bit older than that, but from our younger days. Has got an excellent business, which he'll tell you about in a second. But he also posted on LinkedIn around zero trust. So I thought we'd get us in a room together and chat a bit about the world of cybersecurity, the role of that in CX. But before we do that, Anish, please introduce yourself to our listeners, our followers, so they get a bit about you, your business, and your background.
Yeah, cheers. Thanks, Vinay. I really appreciate that. So first of all, thanks for having me and congratulations on the acquisition, by the way. So yeah, when we first started talking about this, it was a little bit tenuous, and I won't lie. But yeah, so I'm the owner and CEO of Equilibrium Security. I've been going about 12, 13 years now. And in that time, you can imagine we've seen a big change in the landscape of cybersecurity. But zero trust, I think, is something I recently posted about. And I think that's where we kind of picked up this conversation. But the premise of it is very much about there's a landscape that isn't trusted. And so that's what I initially posted about, really, that sort of sparked this conversation.
Yeah. And I think the kind of the link the tenuous link, and it is a tenuous thing. But what I got was, well, actually, if you've got this kind of thing with cybersecurity about two-factor authentication, zero trust, having to re-win your trust each time in each interaction, well, isn't that what we're trying to do with customers through customer experience anyway? Through every interaction, we're trying to do that same thing. What if every interaction was that micro test of trust, a form of like two-factor authentication or some kind of thing? But the trust was not about identity, but in this case, it's about belief in customer experience, right? And then we've also got this world of super hyper-personalization. Companies want data through apps, through transaction customers have to try and personalize experiences. But of course, that's all predicated on the fact that they can collect that data, and customers will actually give that data. In order for them to give that data, there's got to be a level of trust, right? And so, yeah, this whole episode is about exploring those blurred lines between digital defenses, emotional loyalty, and thinking about, well, maybe zero trust could be the key to building more trust and not less in that kind of customer experience model.
Yeah, and look, I've kind of gone down a bit of a rabbit hole with this since we first started this conversation. It's gone pretty dark actually in terms of where I've ended up, and I didn't realize this, but like cyber crime and the impact of kind of cyber breaches is an industry in itself. So the World Economic Forum stated that cybercrime is the third largest economy after US and China.
Yeah.
So just that just tells you the risk that we're all at when it comes to how it implicates people. And then obviously we're looking at it from a CX angle, but we hear about security breaches all the time. I'll give you a ridiculous one recently. I don't know if you've heard of German doner kebab, like really random. Yeah. So they had a security breach recently, and what happened was they've got an app, and you obviously fulfill information on there, and all of that data got leaked. And as a consumer, you don't even think for a second when you're providing your personal details on that type of retailer that your data, you just expect that it'll be secure. And now I will never be registering with a retailer either, right? For obvious reasons. So it's just interesting from the impact it has on us as consumers. Yeah. But going back to that trust point, it's so difficult to maintain.
It is. And if you think about it, pretty much everything we want to do with a company involves in some kind of exchange of data, like logging onto the Wi-Fi in a coffee shop. I mean, it's one of my pet hates that, okay, I've registered with it once, but every time when I go in, I've got to re-enter. I'm going to keep giving you my email address. And you kind of get to the point where you go, well, why do I have to keep doing this? Why do I have to keep giving that? But in order to do it in the first place, you've got to kind of trust that Wi-Fi network is going to hold your data queue. And I'm sure we'll dive into a bit of that in the conversation too. But yeah, so let's start with zero trust, Anish. It sounds like some technical security model, but how can it actually enhance experience rather than get in the way of it? And, a lot of our listeners won't be techies.
Sure. Yeah.
Techies or people from IT. But yeah, just talk to us a bit about it and build on what you said earlier.
Sure. So basically, just as a brief explanation, so zero trust is the premise that everything is untrusted. So when you just said earlier on that actually no one would think their data is going to be, it's not, I actually think completely opposite. I always think my data's at jeopardy of being stolen, and I think that's the premise of it really. Is zero trust is that building a model, and this is a technical model, so these are organizations building an architecture or a framework, if you want to call it that, that essentially assumes that the person trying to connect to your environment, as in is untrusted. So that's users and employees primarily. So if you think back a little bit, there was maybe you may or may not be aware, but organizations were structured in a way such that they had a building, they had a firewall on the edge of that building, and that prevented unauthorized access to their systems, but everything was inside their building, inside their server rooms, inside wherever. That landscape has completely changed. So there's things in the cloud, there's things on mobile devices, things connect to the company device that aren't company issued. And so that model, zero trust, as we talk about, is built from there. It's built from the fact that everything is untrusted until it can verify otherwise. So that's the basis of it, really. But to your question, I guess there isn't really an immediate obvious point at which you can go, okay, well, how do we make it more, how do we make it enhance the customer experience? I guess the point is almost making a little bit of a parallel between those two. not immediately, obviously, but there are parallels.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I think the key thing here is like, I'm just going to take us on to our next point in a second, but it's, yes, zero to trust. We get it. We get the importance of it, and actually that's the kind of the bar in terms of, right, there isn't a trust there, so we've got to have the processes and the technology to help prevent us from any breaches, but that can't come at the cost of the experience for the end consumer and the users. So we've got to figure out a way to make it as frictionless as possible, right? And that's the thing, is how do we guarantee that? How do we ensure that the user experience, the customer experience isn't impacted? Because even today, I mean, I know the technology is there to be able to offer me a frictionless experience, but I was speaking to my broadband company just last week, and they're asking me ridiculous questions. Like, I've got 5 questions that I've answered 10 years ago. I've got no idea what holiday I went to in 2016. Like, it's things like that just leaves a poor experience, when actually I know for a fact, you've got enough data on me to be able to authenticate me, so that I get there's no trust there. I get it, even as a consumer, but come on, like this is lazy now. Like we've got to be offering a much better frictionless experience.
Yeah, almost assume that the customer is assuming that you're lying. You're not who you say you are.
Yeah, exactly. And not to mention it's remembering stuff, right? I mean, that being able to kind of authenticate yourself in that way. Like we shouldn't need to think about it now, and that's what I guess that's what I'm would like to kind of explore in more detail is actually what can we do to now improve that whole experience of not being able to get people to do multi-factor authentication. And I get it, in banking it makes sense because actually that's your money, but when it comes to me going to get a kebab, I don't really want to be authenticating myself just to access an app.
So you definitely don't want to be doing that.
But just on the experience you had there, I'll just briefly share something. Is when my wife had a new we had a new card, a new debit card or credit card, I think it was, and we'd not used it before, so she went to go and pay for my daughter's dental treatment, which is not cheap if anyone's done that. And of course, it's the first time she's using the card. So I'm at home and she's going, I can't use it. So I call up the bank, I go through a few things. It's all automated, and they're immediately saying, well, what's your security number? And I'm immediately thinking, the one I use online, the one I use on my phone, I don't know. And they said, okay, they immediately said, well, don't worry, this is automated still. Don't worry, we'll authenticate you another way. Send something to my app. And I clicked, it was me. So there's almost a bit more of a assumed trust at that point.
Yeah, and I think this is where mobile phones and apps can really play a role, because you're using Face ID to authenticate, right? So there is now, I'm seeing a lot of organizations start to use different ways of being able to kind of authenticate you in that sense. And I guess, look, the organizations that I tend to kind of work with, you've got the CX people focused on delivering great experience, and they go at logheads with the security teams all the time.
Yeah,
right?
we were just chatting about in the kind of thing. So I personally have a view that I think we've gone too far, or I think that it's not the pursuit of frictionless; it's about less friction. Not all friction is negative or a bad experience. Sometimes you can build friction into the experience to drive confidence and to drive trust with customers. Think of it like a click of a seatbelt or the thud of a well-built car, like Volvo have that sound when you shut the door, you know that you're safe in that car, right? So if you think about it in those kind of things, and what we were talking about was the whole designing of experience, and Anish, jump in when you feel like it. But we were just talking about that whole bit, that I guess from a technical standpoint, how much thought is actually given to the experience versus the goal of, I'm just going to protect this organization
at all costs. Well, the difference is, isn't it, is if you design a system that ensures that people connect securely, so whether it's your users or third party or users of your application or whatever it might be, a user of a company, if they're working from home or working remotely and they're using a device that the system doesn't recognize and they've got to authenticate another way, if it doesn't work, they're going to phone their IT and they're going to say, this isn't working, that's why I can't connect, and I've got a meeting, I need to join, or I need a document, I need to access. You're going to be quite frustrated about it. If a customer can't complete the transaction, the customer has a bad experience, they're not going to call and support it. They're just going to get frustrated already at that point because they don't expect it. And I think, sometimes, I can't remember who it was now, but or ordered something, or I ordered some tickets for something, and the little click of a seatbelt thing that you mentioned, like I'd ordered something, I didn't get a confirmation email, I didn't get a little ping, I didn't get a tick, I didn't get a order complete. I was like, what's happened? Have I ordered
how
it
do you
or
know?
not? You know, and they've almost gone. In that scenario, they've made it so frictionless that I don't know what happened at the end of it.
Yeah, exactly. And I think that what you're describing there is that tension. So you've got people that are trying to enhance the experience, trying to make it as frictionless as possible, with one set of objectives. You've got cybersecurity who are trying to protect the organization, rightly so, from attack. But the two have different viewpoints. So how do you bring those two together? You know, I had experiences when I was running innovation at National Express, and we were trying to bring on proof of concepts. And what would happen, we had this great idea of having an innovation lab. We developed the proof of concept, tech providers would work with us. And then you get to the point of handover to BAU, back into the business. And then cybersecurity team would go, oh, no, you can't do that. We've got to check this. They don't have cyber essentials. They've not got the right password criteria or whatever it is. And, you know, I got into a conversation with this as part of a tech group that I was with a few months ago. I think it was last year sometime, when we were talking about, you know, often we talk about proof of concepts, which is proving the technology does what you want it to do. And then that's often driven by the business outcome, the CX team, the digital team. But you've also got to have a proof of viability, which should be more about, you know, is what you're about to do and bring it in secure? Does it have the right security protocols? Does it have the right password protocols? Is the coding that is part of the thought process, but often that's an afterthought.
And look, the numbers are quite clear, right, in terms of, you know, the expected kind of estimated impact of cyber breaches, security breaches is at about 10.5 trillion for 2025. That's what's predicted for this year.
For sure.
So already you can see the impact this has on all industries as a whole. So it's got to be at the top of it. I don't think we're able to even quantify the impact it has on the brand and the experience that
those are
it results in.
unquantifiable, aren't they?
Yeah.
Sure. But yeah, and I think although I sort of agree with the sentiment, I can't fully support your the point at which, you know, the cybersecurity teams, you know, wearing that hat, you know, they're there to kind of ensure the organisation isn't breached. But it's a balance, isn't it?
Yeah, it is, and absolutely they're doing the, you know, it's not criticism of them, they're doing the job.
I wouldn't be able to be on this podcast.
Yeah, somebody has to.
Yeah. No, we're all friends in the end. It's just at that point where you kind of go, come on, you know, surely I can get it through. But they're doing the job right, and we've got to get better at thinking about, as CX practitioners and people that design the experience, thinking about it from their perspective, as well as expecting them to think about it from our perspective. And, you know, in the middle, you'll come to a way of working that should help you. But it is a fundamental part of every experience now, you know, whether it's checkout, whether it's logging into an account after you've signed up, all those things are important touch points in that customer journey. It's not just arrive at the website, buy, use my product, deliver it, and I'm happy ever after. They're going to be those reoccurring moments when a customer wants to come back, and that's where that trust piece comes in. Do I log into my account? Can I get in? And if I, you know, reset my password, or if I do that, all of that stuff comes as part of the experience.
And that's the thing that I kind of want to explore, is that this whole concept around passwords and things, like, you know, we've got to be, surely we're way past this now. Like, there shouldn't be a need for us to remember. Like, as a family, like, we always debate, like, what's the password for this? What's the password for that? Like, it's a constant battle. Like, we shouldn't be living in a world like this. Like, there's got to be, we know the tech's there. So the question is, why is it taking so long for organizations to adopt?
I think part of it is the fact that you know, a lot of organizations, it's very much an IT thing, you know, but actually it should be it touches everybody, right? But I think part of the technology and things like this take an enormous amount of time and money to integrate. And if you have a new, let's just say, you know, something as simple as a password vault that organizations will adopt, so that everyone can generate a password, they're not remembering one, it keeps it on there. That might have taken 2 years to implement, something as simple as that. And then, although the technology is there now to avoid passwords altogether, you know, with pass keys and things, you might see when logging onto various devices, do you want to use a pass key? And what that's actually using is biometric data, like you touched on before, fingerprint, face ID. It's using that to make it a smoother experience, because we've all done it. We go to a website where you only go to it once a year, like car insurance or something. I don't remember the password. So each time you just go through a password reset, whereas actually that takes that away and makes it a little bit more of an, because it's immediately frustrating. It's like you go to create a new account. You've already got an account. It's like, have I? Okay, maybe I have then.
Yeah.
What's your password? I don't know. Your first interaction is quite a
Yeah,
negative.
yeah.
one.
It's true.
Yeah.
It's pretty negative, isn't it?
Yeah.
I'm working with an organization right now who's trialing this concept around silent authentication.
Mhm.
And there's been a lot of debate in the organization as to how this will be perceived by the customer.
Yeah.
Because as you've said, right, that friction's important because that helps you as a consumer think, actually, do you know what? These guys are doing the due diligence to ensure that I'm the right person. But the idea behind silent authentication is that you use the mobile provider's data network to verify their device, that they're calling from the number that they're calling from, et cetera, and that's hooked into an API within that contact center. And then the second that person calls into the IVR, they're fully authenticated, and there's no need to go through anything. And so there was a worry and a concern that actually this is too quick, and actually we've got to ask something. We've got to show the consumer that we are doing a due, because you can't speak to the customer and say, by the way, we've got this technology, and the customer doesn't care. They just want to know that
it's almost too frictionless.
It is, yeah. So I don't know what you guys think. You think that there is legs in this? Like, I mean,
that technology you described there is not new. Okay, maybe using the mobile provider might be a little bit more recent, but actually organizations for probably the best part of a decade, maybe if not even more, had certificate-based authentication. And what that means is you've got a company-issued device, that's a laptop, it's got a certificate because it's enrolled into their Microsoft infrastructure. I'm getting a bit techy now, so there's a technical you go. It enrolls into that, and therefore the minute you connect to go to your server, your application, whatever you need to go to, you're immediately authenticated. Yeah. And the first time people, exactly what you just described, first time users were using that, they were like, is that supposed to? What's happened here? Too good
to be true.
Exactly. Yeah. I didn't start a VPN. I didn't do this. I didn't put any credentials in. So yeah.
And it's funny that because that psychological thing about that's what my point is that we keep going about frictionless, but there are points in the journey where you need that in to psychologically for the customer. Let them know that something's happened and that they've passed a gateway that gives them the confidence that something's been checked.
That's right. Yeah.
Like it's kind of like if you're flying and you wear a seatbelt, the chances of that seatbelt really protecting you from anything is tiny, but you wear it because there's a psychological thing that says if I wear the seatbelt and if something haps, I'm going to be saved.
It's not comfortable.
Well, it's not, no. And if you've watched Lost, it doesn't work anyway. So, so you kind of got that. So I think that's part of it. But coming back to the, part of the understanding what's happening as well, I guess there's also the data points that gives you. So we were talking about, where people abandon a cart because they can't get through to the payment. And often the e-commerce team will look at it, they'll look at the data, but they'll look at it from there's just a cart abandonment, something's happening.
Yeah.
But that could be linked to a really poor checkout experience because maybe they're having to authenticate or, again, re-put in a password or do something.
Or it might be a technical issue whereby, I think I came across a retailer actually that reported this exact issue, and they're saying, well, they had application and software to map a user journey, and they were like, hang on, everything's happening at this point here. And it was because if someone had something in the basket and they wanted to continue shopping, that didn't work. He just got rid of everything in the basket.
And it's interesting. I think one of the things that's really become widely adopted is single sign-on. So you've got you use your Gmail, for example. And a lot of people ask me, like, is that really secure? Like, is it safe for me to put my Google credentials into, again, German doner kebab, so I can authenticate myself? Like, so then that way I don't need to remember a password. I mean, that seems to be a very kind of I'm seeing that everywhere now, which makes life easy for us as consumers.
Yeah. I mean, it's secure in the sense that it's you're using one set of credentials, which is probably quite well tied to something, and therefore if you log in using your Gmail account to something you didn't expect to, you get a notification. Normally you just logged into something, was that you? So things like that make it secure. But the flip side of that, and with a cybersecurity hat on, if your Gmail account, if your Google Mail account is compromised and you're using it for not just to buy kebabs, but to check out an online retailer, then that's the barrier to entry for compromise is higher, but the the world of possibility is much greater in terms of what can be done.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I promise this podcast not being sponsored by German. I promise not to mention it again.
But I had a recent experience with Revolut. So I got a Revolut account. My daughter's got a Revolut card attached to it. She's got an under 18 card, so she gets physical card, but not a digital card. And then randomly the other day, it just popped up on my notifications, an Uber charge for $4.99. But they picked it up and went, "This doesn't look like you normally do this, so we've declined the transaction."
Yeah.
And picked it up immediately, right? And I was like, "Oh wow, that's pretty cool." And then we saw that there'd been 3 or 4 attempts at using her card to do that. Now she's 14, she's not been, and is from London, so she's not been in London. She's not used an Uber. She doesn't have an Uber account, so this is really unusual. But what was even better is I was able to cancel the card immediately right there and then, just with one click, order a new card. They would then set the expectation that this card is coming between these dates. You can track it here. Like, I just liked the way that they did. And there are probably other banks that do something similar. I don't have that many cards across the thing, so I don't know what everybody works the same way. But I liked that. So from a customer perspective, I know we're veering a bit off cybersecurity essentially, but from that confidence again, conveying to me that this is what's happening. That like one of the worst things is when you do have your data leaked and you go back to the organization, the lack of reassurance that you get about what's happening, what's happened to your data, where it's gone, who could have used it. It's just it's in the dark web somewhere, being sold for cash or something. That can
there's a website I came across again as part of this whole process called "Have I Been Pawned?" I don't know if you've come across this. So
well, it was supposed to be "Have I Been Owned?" It was maybe a deliberate or accidental typo, so it's PWN, but it's meant to
"Have
I Been Owned?"
Okay, is that what it was? I just thought maybe my details have been sold on or something.
No, they stuck with the typo in the end.
Okay, well, I guess it's a good PR there, but yeah, I found that quite interesting because again I've put my email address in to see if my data's been leaked, and it has.
I think everybody has.
That's true.
My iPhone tells me that my
password
from passwords from websites I haven't used, clean websites I haven't used for years. Let's just make it very clear. But you kind of get that. But it is like when your data is compromised. I mean, I worked in fraud detection back in banking, way back in the day, and I remember having conversations with people going, I'd get a report on a card, I'd call them up and say, "Hey, have you just been on holiday?" "Yes." "Where have you been to Turkey?" "Yes." "Okay, did you buy this?" "Yes." "Did you buy this?" "Yes." "Did you buy this?" "No." "Did you buy this?" "No." "Where's your credit card?" "It's still in my wallet." And back in the day, it was just people cloning cards using magnetic stripes. But now it's so much more sophisticated. Obviously, the world's moved on, and so you're battling with that. And so again, that cybersecurity building into the experience. To know that if you're going abroad, you don't want to have the thing about all your transactions get stopped because the bank goes, "Well, you're not in the right country, so we're going to stop everything." But there's enough assurance there that you know that those kind of things get picked up, or that if somebody tries to log into your account, that it is picked up.
It's kind of offering options as well, isn't it? I find that I went to France once and my data roaming hadn't kicked in for whatever reason. And I had no way of going online to be able to authenticate myself, to be able to enable data roaming. And I just couldn't figure out a way to get over that hurdle because data was the only way. I had to go and find a Wi-Fi signal somewhere, and, that type of thing. So it's trying to figure out all eventualities. So that if your consumer is stuck, there's got to be a way around it, right?
Yeah.
So I mean, we're kind of coming towards the end of this episode, and I just kind of want to wrap up with I guess a few key points and pointers for our team. So if you're from your perspective, if you're talking to people that are designing experiences, that are thinking about what to do, what would be your I guess guidance? I wouldn't say advice, but necessarily your tips for getting them to think about it in the context of security. What should CX designers be thinking about?
Yeah. Well, before I fully answer that one, it's almost like, because the same issue happens. So we do a lot of security testing, and even the developers, so these are technical people developing, they won't have thought about security. They're talking about they're designing functionality.
Oh, right, okay.
When we as a business come in and test it, they're like, actually, you haven't really thought about this and you haven't thought about that. And in some cases, it's like a redesign almost, because then it's just not secure. So they have to. So I guess to bring it back to the question, it's more about ensuring that security isn't just an afterthought. I suppose. Yeah. And that, you can apply that to everywhere, really.
Yeah. The irony being that most CXers will say, well, CX isn't an afterthought. And actually, as you were sharing that, I suddenly went, oh God, developers don't think about security in the same way as we think sales should think about CX or operations should think about CX. It's not a natural thing necessarily for them to think about. And part of the job is having that conversation, bringing that awareness up, whether security, the same thing about how it can affect their world.
I think it is an awareness thing, and it is so complicated, right? So I think for most people, it's like it's somebody else's problem. Like that's for the security team to figure out and work out. I'm going to carry on doing what I'm doing, but I think the awareness and education is important because you build that into the design from the outset, so I think that's really important. The only other point I just want to finish off on is we talk about consumers engaging brands and how brands are have got zero trust. The same applies to us as consumers when we're being contacted. And this was a challenge that I came across recently where organizations looking to ensure that their consumer knows that they're being contacted by them. Like, banks do it, they call you and they say, look, get onto your app. This is how we'll verify each other. But there is a new concept that I've kind of discovered is being able to publish your brand on people's mobile phones. So through the mobile networks, we're helping organizations present their name, their logo, and their number. Because actually 92% of consumers think unidentified calls are fraudulent. Like there was a survey done recently where we get it right. If you see a random number, there's no trust there whatsoever. So it's like, how can we improve the process of outreaching people rather than just the whole concept of just being called by your bank or whoever, right? And not having that trust is are there other ways of being able to improve that capability? Is also important, isn't it?
I think there's things like biometrics and things like that. I mean, certain banks have also now moved on from their old ID and V, gives random letters from your password to just say something and it picks up your biometrics. It can identify who you are. So technology is moving, but I think it still comes down to, and I think the point that you were making earlier on was it's about deliberate design. And thinking about it from that perspective.
From the offset,
and actually, it still comes down to giving the customer the trust, like the winning trust with the customer that something's happened, that something's been authenticated, right?
Yeah, absolutely, definitely.
And so, again, just kind of on that kind of point, when we're thinking about that for people that aren't technical, how can, if you were now representing, I'm not saying you're representing all people in cybersecurity, but if you were, what would you want people that aren't from that world to be thinking about when they're thinking of solutions, ideas, bringing technology on board? What would be your kind of top 3 or 4 things for them to look out for and tips in terms of helping them get design through?
Yeah, I think the first thing is just the early engagement. That's definitely really important. Thinking about the user journey, of course, like getting that. Because you think about it like from an organization point of view, if you made loads of security barriers for someone to jump through, it's just going to be an awful experience. So getting that balance, everything is a balance, right? A balance between security and functionality, but also breaking down those siloed communications within creating that customer experience. And I think the other thing really is, I would maybe just say this. I can't believe I'm going to say this, but it's like, don't overcomplicate, don't over secure things, because you can the 80-20 rule. You can achieve 80% of the results with 20% of the effort. And bear that in mind sometimes, because that's really key, because you're not going to cater for every single cybersecurity event and every cybersecurity incident. So actually, the Pareto rules law, the 20-80 rule, is actually probably a good rule of thumb. I'm not saying only put 20% of the effort in, but don't worry about trying to get the 100.
Because I guess if somebody's going to get in, they're going to get in. But
exactly.
But
reducing the likelihood.
Reduce the likelihood. You're never going to be 100%.
So I find it interesting that the numbers are going up in terms of the impact, right? And the technology is improving. Like we can see it for ourselves. So what's actually going on here? Because you'd think that there'll be less breaches. There's more breaches. We're seeing data leaks more than ever before. What's your thinking behind that? Like, I mean, why are we regressing here when it comes to this type of thing? And as a consumer, that going back to the trust thing, It doesn't give me any confidence.
Well, there's two things going on. One is the attack surface, as we call it. So that is, your information is now everywhere. Like compared to a few years ago, your information is easily accessible and it is everywhere. And the other thing is, consumers want everything everywhere. And so because that makes the attack surface for the cyber criminals so much more vast. So before having to hack into a computer and having to get past perimeters and firewalls and buildings or whatever, those days are gone really by and large. But people also want instantaneous access to their information.
Right.
So when you open your mobile device and you go into your email, or you go to wherever you want to, I was looking for an email and you're looking for a ticket or whatever you're looking for, you want it there and then. We've got used to that immediate accessibility. So those are the two things that play really, and it's kind of like it's an ever increasing balance.
It's that constant tension and balance between the two
It
things.
is, yeah.
And I mean, before we started the podcast, you were delivering a session to one of your clients, and you were just running through people's training. And I was just, I heard you saying things like, you obviously talked about phishing emails, which everyone talks about, but there's also vishing, and there's also like the what's phishing? That's when they use voice.
Yeah. So someone's calling you up saying, "Oh, we've noticed an issue on your computer. They're obviously targeting the least tech savvy, and we need you to go to this website, enter these details, and we're going to secure your bank account or secure your something. Under the pretense of it being in your interest."
Yeah. I've seen a ton of these scam videos on YouTube actually, where they were
Indian call centers.
Yeah.
None of my relatives. But
And just another point is you said kind of what's causing this to increase, and it is the vastness of data, because there's I don't remember the exact stat, so I won't try and quote it, but the amount of data we generate now in a day or an hour 20 years ago took us 10 years or 5 years to generate. I don't know the exact stat. I don't know,
but it sounds about right.
We're just generating massive swathes of data.
Everything we're doing is creating a digital footprint of something, a transaction record, a login into an email, a login into an account, or everything. Just a simple act of ordering an Uber cab or a German doner kebab. They're all creating data points.
Yeah.
And I think that trust piece is also really important, that companies want to try and give personalized experiences to their customers. They want to personalize marketing. They want to personalize when you turn up to a kiosk and you order something. That all needs data about the customer. But as we said at the beginning of the conversation, the whole point of this is that giving the confidence to the customer that they can pass on that information, or that their information they're handling is being handled in a way and it's being cared for, that it doesn't end up in a data leak, that it's not going to end up on some dark website that somebody's going to do. Because we say we want these things as customers, but if we don't trust the organizations we're giving information to, then how is that ever going to come to pass? We're then going to still we're still going to be suffering from substandard experiences, or moaning about, well, why can't this organization pass my data to this organization? Surely you're this. Sometimes in the same company, in the same department, they won't pass information to each other. But it's understanding that there's a reason, there's a gateway there, because it's designed from a security perspective. But if we're trying to improve those experiences as people that are designing CX, as people that are thinking about CX and improving that, we have to adopt that mindset and look at it from the perspective of the cybersecurity world and go, what is it that we need to be able to think and consider here in order to drive that and build confidence and trust in our customers?
Yeah, I think the kind of moral of today's conversation, it is that balancing act, and we're constantly trying to keep up with everybody's expectations, and not at the compromise of people's experiences and all of those things. And I think in general, excuse me, in general, we're seeing improvements across the board. I think, as I said, as a consumer, I'm definitely seeing that. From a trust perspective, I think that's still questionable because of some of the things that I see, and maybe that's just because I'm looking into it a lot more than the general public. But most people, as you say, are quite they may accept that there could be a security issue here, but the convenience is far more important to them. And I find that sometimes I'll just do stuff and think, do you know what, this could get leaked, but it just makes my life easier.
Right.
Yeah. I mean, look, I think we've covered some really interesting ground here. I know cybersecurity is not the sexiest subject, but it's an important
I beg
one.
to differ.
Yeah, it is when you look at it through a certain lens, and it is when you think about it as it is a conduit, it is a pathway to get in customers' data, improving your interactions, improving the customer journeys, because the more that customers trust you to do it, the more likely they are to do the things you ask them to do and that kind of thing. Some of the insight and some of the shit, like I'm still thinking here going, a developer doesn't think about security, but they're writing the code. Why are they not thinking about security? But like you suddenly then you go, well, actually, yeah, that kind of makes sense to me. As you were talking about that, and I was thinking about some of the brands and things you interact with, it's also dangerous to assume that just because something's a tech startup and you know, a nice shiny app or a website, that it's necessarily secure. Right. So, you know, that sort of comes to me as well.
Yeah, it does. It makes you nervous, doesn't it, when it's too easy? And I think that's why they're just going back.
I think that's the thing, isn't it? It's when it's too easy.
Like,
I don't think I'm ready to trust like fingerprint access into my front door just yet. I think I'll stick with my key. You know, other people's might trust it, but again, you know, they're the kind of things, right?
Yeah, exactly. Cool. Look, I think it's a good place to conclude the session today. Thank you, Anish, for joining us.
Thanks for having me.
This session. Vinay, thanks as always.
Yeah, I'm sorry, before we sign off, Anish, if people want to find out more about Equilibrium, where they need to go, what can you help them with? Just here's your 30 seconds to give them a plug.
Oh, brilliant. Thank you. So we're in conventional sources. So social media, LinkedIn and website. So equilibrium-security.co.uk. There's a resort, a list of all our services we provide, security testing, as we mentioned, certifications, penetration testing, and we also carry out cyber awareness programs. But our most interesting one, actually, I'll just use this moment, is our brand monitoring service. So we don't look at anything technical in terms of an organization. We're looking at all the stuff that a cyber criminal would do before they initiate their attack. So that's things like registering similar sounding domains, misuse of a logo, confidential documents, phishing, starting the phishing email. So it's all the stuff that cyber criminals do before they start an attack. So that's our most interesting and rapidly evolving service. So
that is interesting.
It's preventative, isn't it?
Yeah.
I like that. So
look, we've preventative. We've gone back full circle to French preservatives.
Yeah. Hopefully nobody's translating this conversation. But yeah, look, it's been a pleasure. Really, really good to have you. And just for our listeners and those that are watching, we really appreciate you guys taking the time to listen to us. We'd love to get feedback. Obviously, subscribe and like the conversations, and keep the comments going. We look forward to catching you on the next episode. Thank you.
Thanks again.
Cheers.